What's up, St. Philip family? I want to tell you a secret. This secret is going to change your marriage, make you a better spouse, make you a better parent. This is going to change your workplace. You're going to be a better colleague, a better coworker, a better boss, a better employee. This is going to change you as a friend. You're going to be a much better friend. This is going to cure insecurity. Ooh, that's a good one. Cure insecurity. You never need to worry about being insecure ever again. It's going to change every conversation you have. Every conversation, and especially conflict resolution and disagreement and argument and all those wonderful interpersonal troubles that we find ourselves in. It's going to change all that, and it's going to bring so much more peace and effectiveness to that. Interested? Here it is. Check your ego. In other words, get over yourself. Get over yourself. Here's the deal, brothers and sisters. We have, whether we realize it or not, we have ego problems, every single one of us, because since Adam and Eve, since the fall of man, we've had this disordered sense of self. That's what the ego is. The ego is, it's the Latin word for I, and it's my sense of self, my self-worth, how I see myself. Now, myself is given to me by God. This is the truth. I am created in the image of God. I am a child of God. That is who I am. No one can take that away from me. No one can give that to me. I didn't earn it. I didn't lose it. I am a son of the Father, sons and daughters of the Father. And you are a son or daughter of the Father. You are a child of God. You're in the image of God. That's who you are, which means we're equal as brothers and sisters. So there should be no problem there. No one is better than anyone else. We are all children of the same Father. And my true identity, who I am, is in the Father, in God. I'm made by God in the image of God. So nothing I do, I don't have my identity in what I do or what I cannot do. Who I am in life, my status, my success, my victories, my failures, none of that matters. And none of that can affect who I am. Who I am is a child of God. I'm a child of God, made in the image of God. And because I'm made in the image of God, I'm actually made not for myself. I'm made for others. I'm made for love of God and neighbor. God is love. Love is self-gift. So selflessness is who I am. And if I live for myself, it leads to misery because that's not who I am. But here's what happened. When Adam and Eve sinned in the fall, when they took the forbidden fruit, when they disobeyed God, when they chose to live for themselves instead of for God, they caused a rupture in all of the cosmos. And now everything is broken and disordered, and especially in us. We have such disorder, and in particular, this disordered sense of self. We don't know who we are, and we have this thing called pride. Pride is insidious movement that tries to motivate the ego. And so because we're in such a difficulty, a turmoil interiorly, the ego can now go to extremes. So there's one side of the ego that says, my sense of self is, I'm God's gift to man. I'm the coolest, I'm the best that ever was. And you know what? Anyone who disagrees with that, anyone who threatens that, anyone who can possibly come against me or offer a different perspective, they're wrong. And they need to be destroyed, right? That's the ego in us. How dare you disagree with me? How dare you defy my plan? How do you not understand? How do you not understand? You must just not have the same brilliance that I do. The ego. In sometimes when we struggle in this way, in the high pride, the vanity, right? Just blinded by this ego trip. We can be in this room of people who start to disagree or reject or push back or whatever it is. They just don't understand. And sometimes it can get to the point where we think everyone else is the problem, but definitely not the one person who seems to have the problem. That's the ego trip. There's another extreme. So that is the height of pride. I'm better than everybody else, and anyone who's in my way needs to be destroyed, right? That's not rational. That's not how we think as human beings. That's the ego saying, get out of my way. You're a threat. Get out of my way. Then there's the other side. Also rooted in pride, but a little bit harder to perceive. And that is, I'm garbage. I'm the worst. I'm a mess. I just can't get it right. I just keep failing. Everyone else is so much better than me, and that's fine. You guys keep going. I'm just nothing. So fixed on the self, obsessed with our failure, obsessed with what we cannot do, obsessed with the pity party. That's pride. Who told you were naked? Who told you were naked? Who told you didn't have what you needed? Stop looking at yourself. Get over yourself. So that's both of those extremes are because I'm looking at myself. I'm looking at myself. And, Jonathan Rumi, TV Jesus, I was listening to his talk in the Eucharistic Congress, and he said something profound. He said, he was preparing for the Last Supper before the Congress, which was pretty providential. And he said he was getting so overwhelmed because he said, these scenes are so important. This is like central. This is where Jesus gives us the Eucharist and the priesthood. This is so important to get right. So he was getting so anxious and worried and even sick about it. And he realized through his spiritual director that Satan was getting him to be so fixed on himself that he stopped looking at Jesus. And he said, that's what Satan wants to do. This is the profound statement he made, that Satan wants us to focus on our humanity so that we can take our eyes off of Jesus. And that's what the ego does, is I'm taking my eyes off of God, off of Jesus, and off of my neighbor, my brothers and sisters, and I'm putting it all on me. I'm just looking at myself. That's what Satan wants us to do. He knows he can distract us by our humanity because our humanity is full of failure and flaws and weakness, so we can get in that pity party, and full of pride, so we can feel very offended by others who disagree with us. So he's got us in that hold. And isn't it amazing? The readings have this in spades. First reading from Wisdom. The wicked say, let us beset the just man, for he is obnoxious to us. Obnoxious. Isn't that amazing? In the book of Wisdom, they say, the wicked say, let us beset the just man, for he is obnoxious to us. That is like a perfect description of the ego. And then they go further. They're like, he's obnoxious, so here's what we do. Let's destroy him. He's telling us that we're not following the law. He's telling us that we don't practice well. He's telling us that we need to change our ways. Oh yeah? Well, you're so righteous? Well, here, let's crush him. Let's torture him. Let's destroy him. If he's really serving the Lord will save him. I mean, wow. Have you not experienced this? Maybe in yourself or in others. Like, the ego is so irrational that it goes from, oh, that person's like a threat to me and trying to ask me to change, or like maybe they're better than me, maybe something's going on. I get insecure. So the response of the ego to insecurity is destroy. Like, that's crazy, right? Like, that's just not how we're supposed to treat each other. But like, the irrational pride within us is like, that's a threat. We need to, and like, they're even like, let's crush him and see if he truly is gentle, see if he truly is as righteous as he is. Like we'll show him, instead of maybe like, oh, this guy is actually telling me something that I should listen to because maybe he has a better idea. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not following the law. Maybe I'm in trouble. No. We're not going to go there. That would be too reasonable, too rational. Instead, let's just destroy this obstacle. And how dare he even try to tell me what to do. Now, I know no one watching this video has ever experienced that interiorly. Never. But let me tell you, it's in the book of Wisdom. It's in the inspired word of God. So someone must struggle with that. And then we have the letter of James. James, who really doesn't hold back any punches. So good. He talks about envy and jealousy and comparison and how fruitless it is. He's like, you envy, you're jealous, and you want to possess, but you possess nothing. You don't possess, you don't obtain. It's just misery. And oh man, such a great line. It says, where do conflict and war come from? Is it not from those passions within yourself who are warring with one another. Like he calls it out. He says basically every problem, every conflict, every war, every interpersonal struggle that we have right now is because of ego. The passions within us that are warring. My enemy is not flesh and blood. My enemy is not flesh and blood. We are not enemies, brothers and sisters. We have one Father. We are all united under the one God. We are all children of God. None of us is better than anyone else. And yet, we get into those modes. The ego wants to destroy. All conflict and all war come from the passions within us. Thank you, St. James. And then in our gospel, perfect. We got a trifecta here, okay? So check this out. So Jesus is speaking right against the ego. He says the Son of Man is going to be handed over to men, and they will kill him. So against the pride of life, against that vanity of, he has every right. He's God. He has every right to be like, do you know who I am? Do you know who I am? How dare you treat me that way? How dare you try to arrest me? How dare you disagree with me? How dare you offend me? How dare you spit on me, mock me, make fun of me, calumniate? The list goes on, right? Everything. Jesus, he took all the hits that we in our pride, in our ego, would never tolerate. But he says, he'll be handed over. I'll be handed over to men. I'm not going to get defensive. I'm not going to make excuses. I'm not going to justify why they shouldn't do that. I'm going to be handed over and I'm going to let them kill me. And then I'm going to rise in 3 days. Totally against the ego. He has the ordered nature. He knows who he is in the sight of the Father. He knows who he is. He doesn't need to prove it to anyone. And so, hey, I'll be handed over to them. He's not insecure at all because he knows who he is. He knows who he is in the Father. And then the apostles, we see the insecurity of the apostles. So it says that they didn't understand what he meant, but they were afraid to ask. Why were they afraid to ask? Probably because they didn't want to look dumb, right? They're so worried about themselves. I don't want to be the one to ask the question because what are people going to think of me? I don't want to look dumb in front of everybody else. Whoa, ego trip, right? Alarm bells going off. They're so focused on themselves, they don't want to ask that question. They're like, I don't want to be the one to ask. I don't want to be the one to ask because I don't want to be made an example of. I don't want people to look at me. So for the sake of everyone else, I'm just not going to ask in fear. But here's the deal. Because I'm not asking and because I'm afraid and I'm feeling insecure, I need to do something to make myself feel better. So here's what I'm going to do. Who's the greatest? Isn't that amazing? Jesus is like, what were you arguing about on the way? So they go from, I'm afraid to ask the question, I'm feeling insecure, so I need to do something that's going to make me feel a lot better. So let's do a measuring contest. Let me dominate someone, and so we can say, I want to feel better about myself, ego, so I'm going to feed the ego, feed the ego, feed the ego. And Jesus is like, dude, stop it. If you want to be first, you have to be last and the servant of all. It's not about that. You are not better than anyone else. So we need to get over ourselves. I'm not made for myself. I'm made by God, for God, and for you. I'm made for God and neighbor, not for myself. If I want to be the greatest, I need to be the greatest servant. That's how I'm called to live my life. And if I'm not living my life that way, my ego needs to be checked because I'm making it about myself. So what are we going to do? Let's check the ego. How do we do that? The first is this. The first step in checking the ego is actually acknowledging that I have one. There's a great blindness to many of us because of the ego is so sly, and it's us, right? So we hide from ourselves and we don't even realize that we have this ego trip going on. And we don't realize that we're either so obsessed with ourselves and our failures and like in our pity party and like just sitting there and being miserable to ourselves and everyone around us, or we're trying to destroy everything around us or justify. So here's one of the clues that my ego needs to be in check. So first, I have to say something. I'm not saying that we don't have negative emotions. We can be disappointed in people. We can be hurt by people. We can be upset. We can be angry. We can be frustrated. We can have those negative emotions. Yes. But here's the subtle thing that happens. When we experience that, oftentimes it inflates the ego, and here's the sign that it needs to be in check. Are those emotions directed towards a person or to a problem, behavior, action? If I'm directing those emotions towards a person or even myself, that's a sign that my ego is getting the best of me, because it's never about a person. Every person has a dignity that can't be taken away. They're not less than me, no matter what they do, even if they do it to me, they're never less than me. They're always of equal value and dignity to me. So if I'm thinking with my ego that they're less than me because of what they've done or what they're failing to do, that's an ego thing. It's not an actual value thing. So usually like a sign of the ego is like when I'm experiencing not just those negative emotions, but when I'm starting to blame, complain, judge, detract, gossip, all of these different things, or make excuses, or like in insecurity. I'm feeling insecure, so I start to try to explain why this person might be better than me, and why oh, they have something I don't have. They have the secret sauce. They have the special training. They have the special experience. I have, all of those things. We do those things, and even it's terrible. Don't we have, as friends, we try to help our friends out by using that talk. Well, they have extra experience, or they had special training, or they had, special treatment, or they had, whatever. Trying to make us, we're feeding each other's egos. That's what we're doing. We're not helping at all. We're making it worse. So you get the point. If my negative emotions are directed towards a person, or a person being myself, I'm not looking at Jesus. I'm not looking at the problem or the behavior and separating it from the person. My ego needs to be checked. The second thing that I need to do, so I recognize first, I acknowledge that I have an ego problem, that the ego is engaged, so therefore I know I'm not thinking rationally, so I probably shouldn't make decisions right now. I probably shouldn't say anything right now. I need to be silent, to take a step back and say, okay, if my ego is being tripped, it's trying to tell me that I'm innocent. That's usually what happens. You're innocent, or you're the victim. Okay, I'm not innocent, and I'm not the victim. How can I change the situation? What can I do? What can I fix? What can I change about my tact, about my approach? How much time have I actually spent trying to understand this person, trying to listen to this person, trying to engage this person? What have I done to try to rectify the situation, holding their dignity, even if they don't know it themselves, even if their ego is so blinding them that they're steamrolling everyone, okay? Like maybe their ego is not at bay either, okay? But how can I affect the situation? What can I own? How can I own my responsibility in this event or conflict or problem or issue? Okay. So I've asked that question. And then something that I think is helpful, a helpful little phrase to keep in mind is controlling our ego or checking our ego is not about thinking more or less of myself. So it's not about picking myself up or bringing myself down. It's not about thinking more or less of myself. It's about thinking of myself less. Thinking of myself less. It's not about thinking more of myself or thinking less of myself in value. It's about thinking of myself less. If the ego wants me to fix on myself, like Jonathan Roon, right? Satan wants me to look at myself, get fixed on myself, stop looking at Jesus, stop looking at everyone else, and start saying, woe is me, or that person's a problem. That's not who we are, and it leads to misery, it leads to destruction in marriages, destruction in family, destruction in community, destruction in the world, it leads to conflict and war, and it all starts with me. We need to check our ego. And final tip here, there's actually a litany that helps us to discover the particular ways that we might be struggling with our ego, the triggers. It's called the Litany of Humility. So pull out that Litany of Humility and maybe go through it, pray it, and maybe circle the ones that were like, ooh, yeah, that's something I struggle with. Oh, when that happens, yeah, or that's something I am afraid of, or that's really hard to do. Those are all signs of ways in which we need to check our ego. But here's the deal, brothers and sisters. if we check our ego, if we get over ourselves and we realize how much it's affecting us and how much it's making us miserable, there's freedom. Because it's not about me. I never need to worry about it. It's okay. It's okay if I stink at something. It's okay if I'm weak in a particular area. It's okay if someone's better than me, because we're all focused on the one mission of Christ. We're focused on the mission. It's all about the mission. And if my brother or sister is better than me and they're contributing to the mission, praise the Lord. Because it's not about me. It's not about them. It's about the mission. It's about loving the Lord and my neighbor as myself. And it's about the heavenly victory that is in Jesus Christ. God bless you, brothers and sisters. Let's check our egos, get over ourselves, and change the world.